Section 1. You're sitting on the couch, your phone in hand, looking at a dating app. You pause before sending a message. The words are there, but you hesitate. Should you play it cool, or should you throw in something funny? You think about what they might like, what will make them respond, what will make them interested. And as you stare at the screen, you start to feel that familiar twinge, the sense that maybe you're not being you. Maybe you're just saying what you think will get a reaction, instead of being authentic. The tension in your chest grows. You don't want to mess this up, but you're not even sure if the person you're pretending to be is the one you want them to like. You've been there, haven't you? That feeling where you're constantly adjusting, tweaking, or even completely changing who you are to match the expectations of others. Whether it's a potential partner, a colleague, or a friend, you find yourself asking, what should I do to make them like me? It's a habit you've probably developed over time, the tendency to mold yourself to fit the situation, to act how others expect or want you to act, hoping that by doing so, you'll find approval, acceptance, or connection. But deep down, you know something's wrong. This constant act, this mask you put on, isn't you. It doesn't feel right. In fact, it feels like the more you try to change yourself, the further away you get from who you truly are. You become frustrated, tired, and emotionally drained because no matter how much you change, you still feel unseen. And that's the crux of the problem. When you try to be something you're not, you lose the opportunity to connect with others authentically. You begin to feel like you're chasing an illusion, constantly adjusting, but never getting closer to being truly known. In work, relationships, even in social settings, you start to notice this pattern. You change the way you speak, the way you act, the way you present yourself. You think you're doing it to make a good impression, but instead, you're masking the real you. It's almost like you're wearing a costume, trying to fit into a role that isn't yours. And here's the kicker, when you do this, you're not really connecting with people. You're not building relationships that are grounded in who you are. Instead, you're attracting people who like the version of you that you think they want to see, but not the real you. And eventually, that mask gets heavier. Have you noticed that it's also affecting your own sense of worth? That constant need to mold yourself for others might be eroding your self-esteem. Every time you adapt your personality, your values, or your habits to meet someone else's expectations, you start questioning, am I good enough as I am? The truth is, you are, but the weight of constantly pretending and people-pleasing wears on you. If nothing changes, this pattern will continue, and the cost will be high. Your self-respect starts to erode, your relationships become shallow, and your sense of true connection gets lost. You could waste years trying to impress others, only to find that you never felt deeply connected, truly seen, or fully understood. So, what's the solution? How do you break free from this cycle of people-pleasing, of constantly adapting to fit into someone else's box? The first step is recognizing that you've been performing, not living authentically. Once you know that, you can begin to make small but powerful changes in how you engage with others. You'll learn to show up as your true self, without the fear of rejection or the pressure to mold yourself into someone you're not. By the end of this episode, you'll have tools that will help you let go of the mask you've been wearing and start living and connecting more honestly. Here's what we'll do today. First, we'll dive deep into why people-pleasing is such a powerful force in your life and how it develops. You'll discover the psychology behind it, why it feels like you need to change to be accepted. Then, we'll explore the consequences of this behavior in your relationships, both romantic and otherwise. I'll show you the damage it can do and why it's so important to start being yourself. After that, we'll talk about how you can begin to shift your approach and show up more authentically, in small steps. I'll give you concrete examples of how to break the pattern. And finally, we'll cover how to start attracting people who like you, not the mask you've been putting on. By the end of this, you'll know how to feel free to be yourself in your relationships, and, most importantly, how to build connections that are real. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, financial, or legal advice. If you want steady Stoic focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships every week, this is the channel for you. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. First, we're going to uncover the root causes of people-pleasing and why this behavior has become such a deep part of your life. Next, we'll explore the negative impact it has on your relationships and your sense of self-worth. After that, we'll look at the steps you can take to start showing up more authentically, one small action at a time. Then, I'll show you how these changes can help you attract relationships that are based on real connection, not on pretending. Finally, we'll walk through a real-life scenario where you can apply all this and see the difference it makes. You'll leave today feeling equipped to break free from the people-pleasing trap and build stronger, more meaningful connections. In a bit, we'll explore a real-world situation where you're on a date, trying to decide how much of yourself to reveal. We'll break down how these tools can help you navigate that situation with authenticity and confidence, without the pressure to be anything other than yourself. Stay tuned, this will change the way you approach dating and relationships. Section 2. You've probably felt it before, the compulsion to do whatever it takes to make others happy, even if it means sacrificing your own needs, your time, or your true self. The urge to please others can feel instinctive. It feels like the only way to be liked, to avoid conflict, or to gain acceptance in a world that seems to reward conformity. But at what cost? And more importantly, why do we feel this need to change ourselves for others in the first place? The first thing to recognize is that people-pleasing is not something that happens overnight. It's learned behavior, often stemming from early experiences in life. Maybe you were praised when you did things for others, or when you played the role of the good kid or good friend. Or perhaps there were situations where love or affection was conditional on how well you met others' expectations. Over time, these experiences shape our internal beliefs. We learn that to gain love, respect, or approval, we must adapt to what others want from us. But here's the problem: in the process, we stop showing up as our true selves. We start to base our worth on how others see us, and we become disconnected from who we are deep down. People-pleasing is a survival mechanism. It's a way we try to protect ourselves from rejection, conflict, or the pain of being misunderstood. But the more we do it, the more we lose ourselves. Every time we perform instead of being real, we chip away at our self-esteem, until we find ourselves surrounded by relationships that are based on illusions that we've created by changing who we are. And that's where the real cost comes in. When we consistently mold ourselves to fit others' expectations, we end up feeling emotionally exhausted. Instead of feeling seen and loved for who we really are, we feel like an actor playing a role. The real you is nowhere to be found, and that deep sense of dissatisfaction starts to build up over time. Relationships, instead of being an avenue for genuine connection, become another stage for performance. You become afraid of showing the real you, because you're not sure if others will like or accept it. In fact, you may even convince yourself that people wouldn't like you if they knew who you truly are. So you continue to put on a mask, hoping that this will be the key to finally feeling loved, accepted, or validated. Now, let's talk about what happens when this behavior goes unchecked. People-pleasing leads to resentment, often toward the people we're trying to please, but more often toward ourselves. When we don't honor our own needs or boundaries, we begin to feel angry or frustrated. We resent the fact that we're constantly bending over backward for others, yet they don't seem to appreciate it. We feel taken advantage of, overlooked, and even invisible. It's a vicious cycle. The more we try to please others, the less we feel respected or seen. We put so much effort into maintaining the appearance of being the perfect friend or perfect partner, but we're actually running on empty. But it gets worse. Over time, the pressure of keeping up this performance takes a toll on your mental and emotional well-being. It leads to burnout, feelings of inadequacy, and a constant state of anxiety. You're always wondering if you're doing enough, if you're saying the right things, if you're keeping everyone happy. It's a never-ending treadmill of self-doubt and insecurity, and it's exhausting. Here's the thing: by engaging in people-pleasing, we inadvertently become more reactive in our relationships. We start responding to others based on their expectations of us, rather than from a place of authenticity. Instead of communicating honestly and setting clear boundaries, we suppress our feelings, often because we fear rejection or confrontation. We might avoid saying no because we don't want to disappoint someone, even though we know we don't have the time or energy to fulfill their request. The truth is, this kind of behavior isn't sustainable. It's like trying to keep a balloon afloat by constantly blowing air into it without ever letting any out. Eventually, it's going to pop. So, what's the solution? How do we break free from the cycle of people-pleasing and start showing up as our true selves? The first step is awareness. You have to recognize the patterns of behavior that keep you stuck in this cycle. You need to notice when you start to shift into performer mode, when you start pretending, exaggerating, or changing your behavior to meet someone else's expectations. By catching yourself in those moments, you start to reclaim your power. You can choose to act from a place of authenticity instead of reacting out of fear or insecurity. Once you're aware, it's time to start setting boundaries. Boundaries are your personal rules for how you want to be treated. And the good news is, they can be learned. It's not about being rude or rejecting people, it's about respecting your own needs and feelings. When you set clear, firm boundaries, you're showing others, and more importantly, yourself, that you are worthy of respect, just as you are. Setting boundaries is an act of self-love and self-respect, and it's one of the most powerful tools you have in breaking free from people-pleasing behavior. Now, let's take this one step further. It's not enough to just be aware of people-pleasing and set boundaries. You also need to learn how to show up as your real, authentic self. This requires vulnerability. It means letting go of the fear of rejection and being willing to take risks in your relationships. It's about saying no when you need to, expressing your true feelings, and letting others see who you really are, imperfections and all. Here's a simple example. Think about a situation where you might usually hold back your opinions because you don't want to upset someone. Now, imagine instead of staying silent, you share what you truly think, even if it's uncomfortable. You don't try to soften your words to please the other person. You say what's real for you, and you let the chips fall where they may. This is where the magic happens. When you show up authentically, you attract people who like you, not a version of you that's carefully curated to meet their expectations. In a relationship, showing up authentically doesn't mean being brutally honest at the expense of kindness. It means that you no longer feel the need to hide who you are. You're able to communicate from a place of truth, while still being respectful and considerate of the other person's feelings. This authenticity builds deeper, more meaningful connections. The more you practice this, the easier it gets. To help you get started, I want you to try something small today. Next time you're in a situation where you feel the urge to please someone or hide your true thoughts, take a step back. Notice the impulse, and then take a moment to respond authentically. This doesn't mean you have to make a grand statement or radically change your behavior all at once. It just means you start showing up as you, instead of trying to be what you think others want. Over time, these small actions add up, and you'll begin to feel more empowered, more connected, and more at peace with yourself. Finally, let's talk about how you can put this into practice. The more you set boundaries, embrace vulnerability, and show up as your true self, the more you'll find that the people around you respond positively. You'll begin to attract relationships that are grounded in trust and mutual respect. You'll stop wasting time on people who don't appreciate the real you, and instead, you'll start building connections that are genuine and fulfilling. Remember, breaking free from people-pleasing isn't about being selfish or dismissive of others, it's about being true to yourself. It's about giving yourself the space to be honest and to connect with others on a deeper level. Once you start showing up authentically, you'll realize that people will be drawn to the real you, not the performance. And that's when you'll truly start to experience the freedom and joy of genuine connection. Section 3. It's natural to want to be liked, to seek approval from others. We all crave connection, and when we're afraid that showing our true selves might jeopardize that, it's tempting to mold ourselves into someone we think others will accept. But, as we've seen, this leads to a cycle of inauthenticity, one that wears you down emotionally and disconnects you from your real self. The trick is learning how to shift from performance to authenticity, especially in situations where you're most likely to fall into old patterns. The first thing to understand about shifting into authenticity is that it requires a deep commitment to self-awareness. For years, you've probably reacted to situations based on fear or insecurity without even realizing it. You've been so focused on how others perceive you that you haven't given yourself permission to just be yourself. The key is noticing those moments when you're performing and consciously choosing to act from a place of truth instead. Think about a time when you've been on a date or in a new relationship. How often have you adjusted the way you spoke, behaved, or even thought, just to make a good impression? Maybe you've held back your opinions or exaggerated stories, hoping to seem more interesting, funny, or appealing. It feels like you're doing it for the other person, but ultimately, it's you who suffers. Why? Because you're not being real. You're not allowing yourself the space to show up as you are. Now, let's imagine the opposite. What if, instead of shaping yourself into someone else's expectations, you showed up as your true, unfiltered self? What if you stopped worrying about whether you were saying the right thing or looking the right way and just focused on being authentic? It's easier said than done, right? But the truth is, authenticity isn't something that just happens overnight. It's a practice, a skill that you can learn and build, one step at a time. The process starts with recognition. When you find yourself slipping into performance mode, when you feel that old fear of not being enough creeping in, that's the moment to pause and remind yourself that you don't need to change who you are to be loved. You can be yourself. You can speak your truth, even if it feels uncomfortable. And the more you practice doing this, the more natural it becomes. Think of it like this. Imagine a scenario where you're meeting someone new, whether it's a romantic partner, a potential friend, or a colleague. The old pattern might have you trying to impress them, bending your personality to fit what you think they want to hear. Instead, practice showing up as you are, no pretenses, no fear of rejection. You might stumble at first, feeling nervous or awkward, but in that moment, you're giving yourself the chance to be truly seen. That vulnerability, while uncomfortable, is what allows you to form a genuine connection with others. Now let's break it down into practical steps you can take. The next time you find yourself on a date or in a new situation where you feel the urge to perform, take a deep breath. Acknowledge the urge to change yourself, and then choose to stay grounded in who you are. You might feel like you're exposing yourself in a way that's too raw, too vulnerable, but that's where the real connection happens. By showing up as your true self, you're opening the door for others to see the real you, and that's the kind of connection that leads to meaningful, lasting relationships. Let's walk through an example. You're out on a date with someone you're excited about. They ask you about your hobbies, and you feel the urge to exaggerate a bit. Maybe you want to sound more interesting or impressive, so you start talking about your love of hiking when, in reality, you've only gone a few times. The old you might have leaned into that performance, but the new you can pause. Take a deep breath and respond honestly, saying something like, "I'm actually still getting into hiking, but I'd love to do more of it. Right now, I've been into reading and cooking." In that moment, you've chosen authenticity over performance. You didn't feel the need to embellish or try to be someone you're not. You allowed yourself to be real. This simple shift is profound. When you start being honest about your hobbies, interests, and opinions, you'll notice something incredible. People will appreciate you for who you truly are. You're no longer hiding behind a facade. And the best part is, when you're authentic, you attract others who are also being real. You stop wasting time with people who are only interested in a version of you that doesn't exist. Now, let's talk about the role of boundaries in this process. One of the easiest ways to stay authentic is by setting clear boundaries for yourself. This means learning to say no when something doesn't align with your values or interests. It's about respecting your own time and energy, instead of letting others dictate how you should show up in relationships. Boundaries create space for authenticity to thrive. When you know where you stand, it's easier to stay true to yourself, even when others try to pull you into their world. For example, let's say someone invites you to an event that you're not interested in attending. The old you might have felt guilty for saying no, worrying that it would disappoint the person. But now, with boundaries in place, you can simply say, "Thanks for the invite, but I'll have to pass this time. I've got other plans." That's it. No over-explaining, no apologies. You're honoring your own needs, and by doing so, you're allowing space for the real you to come through. You might find that setting boundaries feels challenging at first. It's natural to worry about letting others down or facing rejection. But remember, boundaries are not about pushing others away, they're about creating an environment where you can show up fully as yourself. And when you do, you'll notice a shift in your relationships, people will respect you more, and the connections you form will be deeper and more fulfilling. One key to practicing authenticity is learning to say no without guilt. This can be especially difficult in romantic relationships. Perhaps you've been in situations where you've said yes to things you didn't want to do just to keep the peace or because you didn't want to hurt the other person's feelings. Saying no can feel like an act of rebellion, but it's actually an act of self-care. The more you practice it, the more you'll realize that saying no doesn't harm relationships, it strengthens them. By continuing to show up as your true self, you'll notice that you stop feeling so exhausted. There's a relief that comes with no longer having to perform or pretend. It's like a weight lifting off your shoulders. You're no longer carrying the burden of maintaining a facade, and that gives you the freedom to enjoy life and relationships on your own terms. So, here's your action step for today. The next time you find yourself in a situation where you're tempted to perform, pause. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, how can I show up as my true self in this moment? You don't need to make grand gestures. It can be as simple as speaking honestly, setting a boundary, or simply being present without worrying about how you're being perceived. Over time, these small actions will add up, and you'll find that the more authentic you become, the more connected you feel, and the more you attract people who appreciate you for exactly who you are. Section 4. When you think about authenticity, the idea of vulnerability might come to mind. Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, especially in a world that rewards strength, independence, and emotional control. We've all heard the phrase, never show weakness. Yet, vulnerability is one of the most powerful tools for building authentic relationships. The truth is, vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, it's a courageous act of showing up as you truly are. It's the willingness to expose your true self, flaws and all, and trust that the people around you will still see you as worthy of love and respect. Think about the last time you truly allowed yourself to be vulnerable with someone. Maybe you shared something personal about yourself or admitted to a fear, a mistake, or a past hurt. At first, it might have felt uncomfortable or even terrifying. But once you took the leap, you might have noticed something incredible happen. The person you were sharing with responded with empathy, understanding, and care. Vulnerability has the power to create deeper, more meaningful connections. But why does it work? The reason vulnerability is so effective in building authentic relationships is that it creates a sense of mutual trust and understanding. When you open up about your fears, struggles, or insecurities, you give others permission to do the same. It's like creating a safe space where both people can be real, without the fear of judgment or rejection. This shared vulnerability fosters intimacy because it shows that you're both willing to meet each other on a deeper level. You're no longer pretending to be perfect or infallible, you're just two people, connecting as human beings. But here's the challenge, vulnerability can feel risky. You might fear that by showing your true self, you'll be judged, criticized, or rejected. You might worry that you won't be accepted or loved if others see the parts of you that you've been hiding. These fears are normal, but they are also what hold you back from experiencing deeper, more authentic connections. The truth is, the more you practice vulnerability, the more comfortable it becomes, and the more fulfilling your relationships will be. Let's take a closer look at how vulnerability plays out in real-life situations. Imagine you're dating someone new. You've been on a few dates, and things are going well. But then, during one conversation, a topic comes up that feels a little too close to home. It's something personal, something you've struggled with, but you feel a tug inside, telling you it might be time to be honest. You could brush it off, change the subject, or continue to present a version of yourself that feels safer. But instead, you decide to open up. You share your thoughts and feelings, even though it feels uncomfortable. You admit to a past mistake, a fear you have, or a part of your life that you've kept hidden. What happens next? You might be surprised. More often than not, when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, the other person responds with empathy and care. They appreciate your honesty and your willingness to share something so personal. This exchange creates a deeper bond. Instead of feeling distant or guarded, both of you are more connected. You've let down the walls, and in doing so, you've opened the door for a more meaningful relationship. But let's be clear, vulnerability isn't about oversharing or dumping your emotional baggage on someone else. It's about showing up as your true self in an authentic way, without the need to be perfect. It's about being honest and transparent while still maintaining boundaries and respect for yourself and the other person. Vulnerability doesn't mean telling someone everything all at once. It's about choosing moments to be real and letting your guard down, step by step. Here's an example of how vulnerability can be practiced in everyday life. You're at work, dealing with a challenging project or a difficult colleague. Instead of keeping your frustrations bottled up or pretending everything is fine, you decide to be vulnerable. You express your concerns, not in a defensive way, but in an open, honest manner. You say something like, "I've been struggling with this project, and I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. I'm not sure how to move forward, but I'd appreciate any feedback or help you can offer." This small act of vulnerability invites collaboration and understanding. It shows that you're willing to admit that you don't have all the answers, and that's perfectly okay. Vulnerability doesn't only apply to romantic relationships or work, it's essential in all types of connections, including friendships and family dynamics. For example, imagine you're having a conversation with a close friend, and there's a topic you've avoided because it makes you uncomfortable. You've never really talked about it, but you know it's important for your relationship to move forward. You decide to be vulnerable and bring it up. "I've been feeling a bit distant lately, and I realize I haven't been sharing as much with you. I've been going through some personal stuff, and I didn't want to burden you with it. But I want to be honest with you about what's been on my mind." That simple moment of vulnerability can transform the relationship. It creates a deeper sense of connection and trust, and it shows that you're willing to be open, even when it's difficult. Now, let's talk about the impact of vulnerability on your self-esteem. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that being vulnerable makes you weak or less capable. But the opposite is true. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you are actually embracing your true strength. You are showing courage by letting go of the fear of judgment and opening up about who you really are. Vulnerability isn't about being perfect, it's about being real, and that authenticity builds self-confidence. The more you practice vulnerability, the more you trust yourself, and the more you trust that others will accept you for who you truly are. One of the most profound benefits of vulnerability is the sense of freedom it brings. When you stop hiding behind a mask and allow yourself to be authentic, you no longer feel like you're carrying a heavy weight. You're not pretending, you're not afraid of being found out, you're simply existing as your true self. And when you experience that kind of freedom, everything changes. Relationships become easier, more natural, and more fulfilling. You stop holding your breath, waiting for someone to accept you. You start living and connecting in ways that feel real and true. So, what can you do today to practice vulnerability? Start small. Think about a situation where you can let down your guard a little. Maybe it's a conversation with a friend, a colleague, or even a family member. Share something personal about yourself that you've been holding back. It doesn't have to be a big revelation, but allowing yourself to be open will help you build the muscle of vulnerability. Over time, this practice will lead to deeper, more authentic connections, and it will help you feel more at ease in your relationships. Vulnerability isn't easy, but it's worth it. The more you embrace it, the more you'll see how it enriches your relationships and strengthens your connection with others. Remember, the greatest relationships are built on honesty, openness, and the courage to be vulnerable. So, start practicing today. Let go of the fear of judgment, and allow yourself to show up as the real you. Section 5. By now, you've learned that authenticity is about being true to who you are, not adjusting or performing to meet the expectations of others. It's about showing up as your genuine self in every aspect of your life, whether in dating, friendships, work, or family interactions. The challenge, however, is translating that authenticity into real-life actions. It's one thing to understand the value of being authentic, but it's another to practice it consistently in your day-to-day interactions. So how do you make authenticity a regular part of your life? The first step is to recognize the subtle ways in which you've been performing. This isn't always obvious. You might not realize when you're changing your behavior to fit someone else's expectations. Maybe you've gotten so good at people-pleasing that it feels natural. You might find yourself saying yes to things you don't want to do, or agreeing with someone just to avoid conflict. These small acts of performance are often so ingrained in our behavior that they happen without much thought. But recognizing these moments is the first step in changing them. Let's start with work. Think about a typical day at the office. Maybe you've got a meeting with your manager, and there's an important project you're working on. In the past, you might have downplayed your struggles or avoided being honest about how overwhelmed you feel because you didn't want to appear incapable. You might have kept your true thoughts to yourself, nodding along with what others said, even if you didn't fully agree. This is a perfect example of performance. You're adjusting your behavior to fit the expected role of a competent, confident worker, even though deep down, you might be feeling frustrated, unsure, or overwhelmed. Now, let's practice authenticity in this context. The next time you're in a similar situation, instead of hiding behind that mask, try something different. When asked about your progress on a project, be honest. Say something like, "I've been working on this, but I'm running into a few challenges. I'm trying to figure out the best solution, but I could use some feedback." This doesn't mean you're admitting failure. It's about being real about where you are and allowing space for help or collaboration. This small act of honesty will not only feel liberating, but it will also invite deeper collaboration and understanding from your colleagues. You're no longer pretending to have it all figured out. You're allowing yourself to be human. The same principle applies to your friendships and relationships. Think about a conversation you had recently. Perhaps you were talking to a friend about a difficult situation, and instead of sharing your true feelings, you minimized your emotions to avoid burdening them. Maybe you downplayed your struggles, saying something like, "I'm okay, it's not a big deal," when in reality, it was a big deal. This is another example of performance. You're pretending to be okay, even though you're not, because you don't want to seem weak or needy. Now, what if you allowed yourself to be authentic? Instead of brushing off your feelings, you could say, "I've been feeling really overwhelmed by this situation, and it's been hard to handle on my own." You're not dumping all your emotions on your friend, but you're being honest and open. This small act of vulnerability invites more genuine connection. Your friend will likely appreciate your honesty and might even share their own experiences, leading to a more authentic exchange between you both. When you practice being real in your relationships, you create space for others to do the same, which strengthens your bond. One of the most powerful ways to practice authenticity is through setting clear, healthy boundaries. Boundaries are an essential part of authenticity because they allow you to communicate your needs and limits without guilt or fear of rejection. When you set boundaries, you're showing others that you value yourself enough to be honest about what you need, whether it's in terms of time, energy, or emotional space. Think about a situation where you've been hesitant to set a boundary. Maybe someone regularly asks you for favors, and while you want to help, it feels like they're taking advantage of your time. You might feel guilty saying no because you don't want to disappoint them or seem unhelpful. But the truth is, when you don't set clear boundaries, you're not being authentic. You're letting others dictate how you spend your time and energy. The next time someone asks you for something you can't give, practice authenticity by setting a clear boundary. You can say something like, "I'm unable to help with that right now. I've got other commitments, and I need to prioritize those." You don't need to over-explain yourself or feel guilty. By practicing this, you're honoring your own time and energy, and you're showing the other person that you have limits, just like they do. Boundaries are an important form of self-respect and an integral part of authentic living. In relationships, authenticity also means allowing space for both you and the other person to express your feelings openly. Think about how often you may hold back your true thoughts to avoid conflict or to keep things peaceful. For example, maybe your partner does something that bothers you, but instead of expressing how you feel, you keep it to yourself, hoping it will just go away. Over time, this leads to resentment and frustration because you're not addressing the issue head-on. By practicing authenticity, you allow space for honest communication, even when it's difficult. Let's say your partner leaves their clothes around the house, and it's starting to get on your nerves. Instead of silently stewing in frustration, you can say, "Hey, I've noticed that the clothes have been piling up, and I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by it. Can we figure out a better system?" This doesn't have to be a confrontation, it's simply an honest expression of how you feel. When you communicate authentically in relationships, you avoid the buildup of resentment and create space for open, constructive conversations. When you start practicing authenticity in these small, everyday moments, you'll notice something powerful begin to shift. The more you show up as your real self, the more people will respect you. They'll appreciate your honesty, your vulnerability, and your willingness to be true to who you are. The relationships you build will be grounded in mutual respect and trust, and you'll feel more connected and valued. But more importantly, you'll start to feel more connected to yourself. You'll no longer be performing or hiding parts of who you are, you'll simply be living your truth. Here's your action step for today. Think about one area of your life where you've been performing or hiding your true self. Maybe it's at work, in a friendship, or in a romantic relationship. Identify one moment this week where you can practice authenticity. It might be as simple as expressing your true feelings in a conversation, setting a boundary, or being honest about your needs. By taking this small step, you're one step closer to living authentically and building deeper, more fulfilling connections. Authenticity is a practice, and like any new habit, it takes time to integrate into your life. But with each small act of honesty, vulnerability, and boundary setting, you'll find yourself living more freely, with greater peace and confidence. As you continue on this journey, remember, authenticity isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up as you, flaws and all. And that's more than enough. Section 6. At this point, you've explored the importance of authenticity in your relationships, how vulnerability plays a key role in creating deeper connections, and how practicing authenticity in everyday situations can help you break free from the cycle of people-pleasing. But what about your relationship with yourself? The truth is, authenticity isn't just about how you relate to others, it's also about how you see yourself. If you're constantly adjusting who you are to fit someone else's expectations, you're telling yourself that you're not enough as you are. In order to truly live authentically, you must first cultivate a strong sense of self-worth and self-acceptance. Only then can you fully embrace who you are, without the fear of judgment or rejection. Self-worth is the foundation upon which authenticity is built. If you don't believe that you are worthy of love, respect, and happiness just as you are, then it's easy to fall into the trap of people-pleasing and constantly performing to gain approval. The journey toward authenticity begins with learning to see your own value. When you develop a strong sense of self-worth, you no longer feel the need to earn others' approval by changing who you are. Instead, you show up as you are, knowing that you are enough, just as you are. But how do you build that sense of self-worth? The first step is to recognize that your value isn't determined by how others perceive you. So much of our self-esteem is tied to external validation. We want people to like us, to appreciate us, and to approve of the things we do. But true self-worth comes from within. It's about knowing that you are deserving of respect, love, and acceptance regardless of what anyone else thinks. This shift in mindset is critical for breaking free from the people-pleasing cycle. When you stop looking to others to validate your worth, you free yourself from the constant pressure of performing and pretending. The second step is to practice self-compassion. Authenticity requires you to accept your imperfections and flaws. We all have them. No one is perfect, and that's okay. Embracing your flaws and mistakes is part of accepting yourself fully. When you practice self-compassion, you treat yourself with the same kindness, care, and understanding that you would offer to a friend. Instead of criticizing yourself for your shortcomings, you learn to be gentle with yourself. You understand that making mistakes is part of being human, and that these mistakes do not diminish your worth. In the past, you might have been harsh with yourself when you made a mistake or fell short of expectations. Maybe you criticized yourself, called yourself names, or beat yourself up emotionally. This kind of self-criticism only reinforces the belief that you're not enough, and it keeps you locked in a cycle of self-doubt. By practicing self-compassion, you begin to shift this narrative. Instead of thinking, I messed up, I'm not good enough, you can say, I made a mistake, but I am still worthy of love and respect. I can learn from this and do better next time. Self-compassion is also about forgiving yourself for past mistakes. We all have regrets, moments where we wish we'd done things differently. But holding on to these regrets only weighs you down and prevents you from moving forward. Forgiving yourself allows you to release that weight and make space for growth. When you stop punishing yourself for past actions, you can start to embrace the present and move forward with confidence. Let's put this into action. Think about a time when you made a mistake or felt like you fell short of your own expectations. How did you react? Did you criticize yourself or beat yourself up? Now, imagine if you had responded with compassion instead. What if, instead of dwelling on your shortcomings, you recognized that you were doing your best and that mistakes are a natural part of the human experience? Take a moment to forgive yourself for this mistake and acknowledge that you are still worthy of respect and love. This simple act of self-compassion can have a profound impact on how you see yourself and how you approach future challenges. Building self-worth also involves celebrating your strengths. We often focus on our weaknesses or the areas where we feel inadequate, but it's equally important to acknowledge our positive qualities. What are the things you're good at? What are your talents, your skills, your unique qualities? Celebrate them. Recognizing and appreciating your strengths reinforces the belief that you are worthy and capable. When you take time to reflect on what you bring to the table, whether it's your creativity, your kindness, your intelligence, or your work ethic, you build a sense of pride and confidence in yourself. One way to celebrate your strengths is to keep a gratitude or self-appreciation journal. Each day, write down 3 things you appreciate about yourself. They don't have to be big things, small victories count too. Maybe you handled a difficult conversation with grace, or you completed a task you'd been putting off. Whatever it is, take note of it. This practice helps shift your focus away from what you perceive as your flaws and instead highlights the positive aspects of who you are. Another important aspect of building self-worth is setting healthy boundaries. When you allow others to treat you in ways that are disrespectful or dismissive, you send a message to yourself that you're not worthy of better treatment. By setting clear boundaries, you communicate to both others and yourself that you value your time, energy, and emotional well-being. Boundaries are a form of self-respect, and they reinforce the idea that you are worthy of respect from others. Whether it's saying no to a request that doesn't align with your priorities, asking for space when you need it, or standing up for yourself in a difficult situation, setting boundaries is a powerful way to honor your self-worth. For example, let's say a friend asks you for a favor that you simply don't have the time or energy to fulfill. Instead of feeling guilty or saying yes out of obligation, you can practice authenticity and self-respect by setting a boundary. You could say, I'm really sorry, but I can't help you with this right now. I've got other commitments that I need to prioritize. You're not being selfish, you're simply honoring your own needs and valuing your time. This act of setting a boundary reinforces the belief that you are worthy of respect, both from others and from yourself. Building self-worth also requires you to challenge the negative beliefs you have about yourself. If you've internalized the idea that you're not good enough, not lovable enough, or not capable enough, it's time to question those beliefs. Ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Is it based on facts, or is it just a story I've been telling myself? More often than not, these negative beliefs are rooted in past experiences or societal expectations that no longer serve you. When you recognize these beliefs for what they are, you can start to replace them with more empowering thoughts. Remind yourself that you are worthy of love, respect, and success, not because of what you do or how you look, but because you are inherently valuable as a person. In summary, building self-worth is a crucial part of embracing authenticity. When you learn to love and accept yourself, flaws and all, you stop relying on external validation and begin showing up as your true self. Self-compassion, celebrating your strengths, setting boundaries, and challenging negative beliefs are all powerful tools in this process. The more you practice these steps, the stronger your sense of self-worth will become. And as your self-worth grows, so will your ability to live authentically, without the fear of judgment or rejection. Your action step today is to practice self-compassion. Think about one area where you've been hard on yourself and replace that criticism with a compassionate, kind thought. Acknowledge that you are doing your best, and that's enough. By practicing self-compassion regularly, you will begin to see yourself through a lens of love and acceptance, which will naturally allow you to show up authentically in all areas of your life. Section 7. At this point, you've learned that being authentic is about showing up as your true self, rather than adjusting who you are to fit the expectations of others. You've practiced vulnerability, set boundaries, and built a stronger sense of self-worth. But what happens when you start living authentically in your relationships? The reality is that when you stop performing and start showing up as your true self, you begin to attract the right people into your life, those who appreciate you for exactly who you are. For so long, you may have found yourself trying to fit into relationships, romantic or otherwise, by molding yourself into someone you think others would like. You changed your opinions, interests, and even values to align with what you thought would be accepted. But here's the truth, when you're not showing up as yourself, you're likely attracting people who aren't a good match for you. They might like the version of you that you're presenting, but they don't know the real you. This creates a shallow connection that's based on a false premise. The deeper, more meaningful relationships can't form if you're not being authentic from the beginning. When you start living authentically, you stop attracting people who are drawn to an illusion of who you are. Instead, you attract people who genuinely appreciate you for your unique qualities, your values, your quirks, and your imperfections. These are the people who are genuinely aligned with you. And these relationships are built on a much stronger foundation than those that are based on pretending or performing. The more you embrace your true self, the more you'll attract others who also feel comfortable being their true selves. Authenticity breeds authenticity. Let's explore how this plays out in romantic relationships. Imagine you've been dating someone for a while, and up until now, you've been showing them a version of yourself that you thought would be more attractive or appealing. Maybe you've held back certain opinions, exaggerated your interests, or even avoided talking about past experiences that you think might make you seem less desirable. But you start realizing that this pattern of people-pleasing is draining, and you're ready to be yourself. So, one evening, you decide to show up authentically. Instead of pretending to be someone you're not, you share your true thoughts and feelings. You talk openly about your past, your values, and what truly matters to you. Maybe there's a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, or a part of yourself you've been hiding. This time, you don't filter yourself. You are real and raw. You don't need to impress them anymore, you just need to be yourself. What happens next? You might feel vulnerable at first, but you'll also feel a deep sense of relief. And more importantly, you might be surprised by how your partner responds. When you show up as your true self, the other person is more likely to do the same. They'll appreciate your honesty and feel more connected to you because they know that they're seeing the real you, not a version of you that you've created to meet their expectations. If the relationship is going to work, it's going to be based on who you really are, not on a false persona. The same principle applies to friendships. Think about a friendship where you've been holding back parts of yourself. Maybe you've been trying to be the funny friend, or the helpful friend, always putting on a mask of being upbeat and available, even when it's not authentic. Over time, this can feel like a heavy burden. You start to wonder if your friends really know the real you, or if they're just interacting with the version of yourself that you've presented to them. When you start living authentically, it gives your friendships the opportunity to deepen. You'll stop feeling the need to perform and start feeling more comfortable being real with your friends. You might share something personal or vulnerable, or express a feeling that you've been holding back. The key is being open and honest about who you are, and by doing so, you give others permission to do the same. Instead of shallow, surface-level interactions, you create opportunities for deeper connections based on mutual respect and understanding. And if someone isn't receptive to your true self, that's okay. You're not looking for validation anymore, you're looking for genuine relationships with people who like you for who you are. Now, let's talk about the professional aspect of authenticity. It's easy to get caught up in trying to impress others at work, to constantly prove your worth, and to perform to meet the expectations of your colleagues or boss. But when you focus too much on performance and not enough on authenticity, you risk feeling disconnected from your true goals and values. You might find yourself taking on work that doesn't align with your interests or values, or compromising on your principles to please others. Over time, this leads to burnout, dissatisfaction, and a lack of fulfillment. Authenticity in the workplace is about showing up as your true self, while still respecting the professional environment. It's about aligning your actions with your values and finding ways to be authentic without compromising your work ethic or professionalism. For example, if you're in a meeting and you disagree with something, instead of staying silent or pretending to agree, practice authenticity by expressing your thoughts respectfully. I see your point, but I think there's another angle to consider. By doing this, you're not only being true to yourself, but you're also showing your colleagues and superiors that you can be confident, direct, and constructive. The more you practice this, the more you'll start attracting the right opportunities and working relationships that are aligned with your true self. Living authentically in all areas of your life, romantic, social, and professional, helps you attract the right people. But it's not just about attracting the right people, it's also about attracting the right opportunities. When you're living authentically, you start aligning with your true purpose and passions, and this opens doors to things that feel meaningful and fulfilling. Whether it's a job that aligns with your values, a romantic partner who supports your true self, or friends who embrace you for exactly who you are, living authentically helps you build a life that is true to you. You also begin to let go of the fear of rejection. The more you practice being authentic, the more you realize that the people who are meant to be in your life will appreciate you for exactly who you are. And those who don't, well, they're not the right fit. Authenticity acts as a filter, helping you attract people and opportunities that align with your true self, while pushing away those that don't. Here's your action step for today. Identify one area of your life where you've been performing or hiding your true self. It might be a relationship, a friendship, or even your professional life. Decide today to take a step toward showing up as your authentic self in that situation. It doesn't have to be a huge change, it can be as simple as expressing your true thoughts or setting a boundary. The more you practice living authentically, the more you'll attract the right people and the right opportunities into your life. Remember, authenticity is not just about being true to others, it's about being true to yourself. And when you start living authentically, you'll not only attract the right people, but you'll also create a life that feels deeply fulfilling and aligned with who you truly are. Section 8. As you've already learned, authenticity is key to building stronger, more meaningful relationships. It's the foundation that allows you to stop performing and start showing up as your true self. But authenticity isn't just about being real with others, it's also about creating connections that are built on trust, vulnerability, and mutual respect. The art of building lasting connections is rooted in the ability to engage with others without the mask of pretense, without hiding parts of yourself to meet someone else's expectations. The more you allow yourself to be seen for who you truly are, the more likely you are to attract relationships that are authentic, fulfilling, and long-lasting. In the past, you may have experienced relationships where you were constantly on edge, wondering if the other person truly liked you, or if they liked the version of you that you were presenting. You may have questioned whether the connection you were forming was genuine, or whether it was built on the illusion of who you thought the other person wanted you to be. These doubts are common in relationships that are not rooted in authenticity. When you're constantly performing, you're not allowing yourself to be truly seen, and that creates a barrier to deep, lasting connection. The key to building lasting connections is vulnerability. Vulnerability is the willingness to expose the parts of yourself that you typically keep hidden, to share your true thoughts, feelings, and experiences without the fear of rejection. This doesn't mean oversharing or dumping all your emotions on someone else. it means allowing others to see you for who you truly are, flaws and all. Vulnerability is the foundation of deep connection because it shows the other person that you trust them enough to be real. And when they respond with empathy and understanding, that connection grows stronger. Imagine you are in a conversation with someone you care about, and you decide to share something personal. Maybe it's a past experience that shaped who you are today, or a fear that you've been carrying. Instead of keeping it to yourself, you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and you open up. What happens? The other person responds with care, understanding, and perhaps even shares something personal in return. This exchange of vulnerability fosters trust. It's no longer just a surface-level interaction, it's a meaningful, human connection based on authenticity. But vulnerability doesn't come easily. It's one of the hardest things to practice, especially if you've been conditioned to hide parts of yourself to avoid judgment or rejection. Many of us grow up in environments where we're taught to suppress our emotions, to keep things bottled up, or to put on a happy face even when we're struggling. But the truth is, vulnerability is what allows us to form real, deep connections with others. It's what makes relationships truly meaningful, because it's in our shared vulnerability that we find our common humanity. Here's an example of how vulnerability plays out in a relationship. Let's say you're in a romantic relationship, and you've been feeling distant from your partner. Instead of avoiding the issue or pretending everything is fine, you decide to open up. You share your feelings of disconnect and express your concerns. This doesn't mean blaming your partner or making accusations, it's about being honest about your own feelings. You might say something like, "I've been feeling a little disconnected lately, and I wanted to share that with you. I care about you, and I want us to feel close again." This simple act of vulnerability can completely shift the dynamics of the relationship. It allows your partner to understand where you're coming from and gives them the chance to respond with empathy, opening the door for deeper communication and connection. In friendships, vulnerability works in much the same way. Think about the last time you had a real conversation with a friend. Did you share something personal? Did they? Vulnerability is often what deepens friendships and makes them more fulfilling. When you allow yourself to be real with your friends, you create space for them to do the same. And the more both of you are able to show up authentically, the stronger your friendship becomes. This is especially important when things get tough. Real friends don't just stick around when everything is going well, they stay through the hard times, the struggles, and the moments when you need support. Vulnerability creates trust, and trust is the foundation of any lasting relationship. However, vulnerability can be challenging, especially if you've been hurt in the past. If you've opened up to someone before and they didn't respond with the care and respect you expected, it's easy to build walls around your heart. You might tell yourself that it's better to protect yourself and keep your true feelings hidden. But the more you close yourself off, the harder it becomes to form meaningful connections. True intimacy in relationships comes when both people are willing to be vulnerable, to show up as their real selves without fear of judgment. It's important to remember that vulnerability doesn't mean sharing everything all at once. It's not about dumping all your emotions or sharing every little detail of your life. Vulnerability is about sharing what's important to you, what's on your heart, in a way that feels safe and appropriate for the relationship. It's about trusting that, by being open, you're allowing yourself to be seen and heard in a way that fosters connection. You don't need to force vulnerability, just start with small, honest moments and allow the trust and intimacy to grow naturally over time. To practice vulnerability in your relationships, start by noticing moments when you feel the urge to hide or withhold something. Maybe it's a feeling of sadness, a fear, or a desire that you've been keeping to yourself. In those moments, ask yourself, what would it look like if I were to open up? It could be as simple as sharing how you're feeling, expressing your needs, or being honest about something that's on your mind. By taking these small steps, you create opportunities for deeper, more authentic connections. Over time, you'll find that vulnerability becomes easier and more natural. In addition to vulnerability, another important aspect of building lasting connections is mutual respect. When you're authentic with others, you're not only showing them who you are, you're also giving them the chance to show up as their true selves. This mutual openness creates a foundation of respect. Respect is essential for any healthy relationship, and it allows both people to feel valued for who they truly are, not for what they can pretend to be. When both people are committed to authenticity and respect, the relationship becomes a safe space for growth, understanding, and genuine connection. In summary, building lasting connections is all about practicing vulnerability and mutual respect. The more you show up as your authentic self, the more likely you are to attract relationships that are meaningful and fulfilling. Vulnerability may feel uncomfortable at first, but it's the key to creating deep, trusting connections with others. When you allow yourself to be real, you invite others to do the same. And when both people are committed to being authentic, the relationship has the potential to flourish and stand the test of time. Your action step for today is to identify one relationship where you can practice vulnerability. It might be a romantic partner, a friend, or even a family member. Take a moment to reflect on something personal you've been withholding, and share it with them in an honest, respectful way. Notice how it feels to be vulnerable and how it deepens the connection between you. Remember, the more you practice vulnerability, the more you'll strengthen the bonds of your relationships, and the more fulfilling those connections will become. Section 9. It's one thing to learn about authenticity and vulnerability in theory, but it's another to apply these concepts in real life. In this section, we'll walk through a scenario that many of us have experienced, navigating a difficult conversation where we have the chance to practice authenticity and vulnerability. By the end, you'll see how showing up as your true self in such moments can transform the way you interact with others, leading to deeper, more genuine connections. Let's imagine a scenario. You've been in a romantic relationship for a few months. Lately, you've been feeling a bit disconnected. Maybe there's been tension between you and your partner, and you've been avoiding addressing it. The old pattern would have you brushing it off, keeping your feelings to yourself, and hoping things would get better on their own. But you've learned that in order to build a meaningful connection, you need to show up authentically, and that means being honest about your feelings, even when it feels uncomfortable. It's a Friday evening, and you and your partner are sitting on the couch after a long week. The conversation feels surface level, and you can tell that there's some distance between you. This is your opportunity to address the disconnect, to practice vulnerability, and to have an authentic conversation that could bring you closer. But it's also a little scary. What if they don't understand? What if they get defensive? What if they don't feel the same way? You take a deep breath and decide to approach the conversation with authenticity. Instead of pretending that everything is fine, you say, "I've been feeling a little disconnected lately, and I wanted to share that with you. I care about you, and I think we need to talk about it." This might feel vulnerable. You're putting your feelings out there, hoping your partner will respond with empathy. But by showing up as your true self, you're setting the stage for a deeper connection. Now, what happens next? In the past, you might have been afraid to express your feelings, fearing it would lead to conflict. But when you're authentic, you allow space for a real conversation. Your partner might be surprised at first, but they'll likely appreciate your honesty. In fact, by opening up, you've given them the opportunity to do the same. They may share their own feelings, concerns, or frustrations, and together, you can work through the issue as a team. Here's where authenticity and vulnerability truly shine. As the conversation unfolds, you both express your thoughts and emotions openly, without fear of judgment. You don't hide behind defensiveness or blame. Instead, you both listen, validate each other's feelings, and try to understand each other's perspectives. You might even learn something new about your partner, something that brings you closer. By the end of the conversation, you both feel understood, connected, and more aligned. You've turned a potentially difficult moment into an opportunity for growth and deeper intimacy. This is the power of authenticity in action. By showing up as your real self, vulnerable, honest, and open, you've created a space for true connection. You didn't try to manipulate the conversation or perform to fit a certain mold. You simply shared your feelings and invited your partner to do the same. And in doing so, you've built a stronger, more resilient connection that's based on mutual trust and respect. Now, let's break down what happened in this conversation. First, you recognized the need for authenticity. You noticed that there was a disconnect, and instead of ignoring it, you decided to address it head-on. By being honest about your feelings, you showed vulnerability and created an opportunity for deeper communication. Second, you created space for your partner to share their thoughts and feelings as well. Authenticity isn't just about being real yourself, it's about encouraging others to do the same. When both people in a relationship are willing to be vulnerable, the connection deepens. Third, by staying calm and respectful during the conversation, you prevented it from escalating into conflict. Authenticity doesn't mean being brutally honest or saying whatever comes to your mind without consideration. It means expressing your true thoughts and feelings while still being mindful of the other person's emotions. You didn't attack your partner or point fingers, you simply shared your experience and invited a healthy, constructive conversation. Finally, the outcome of this conversation was a deeper connection. By being authentic, you created the conditions for trust and understanding to grow. Instead of avoiding the issue and allowing it to fester, you addressed it openly and with care. This not only improved the relationship but also built a stronger foundation for future communication. The more you practice authenticity in your relationships, the easier it becomes to navigate difficult conversations like this one, and the stronger the bond between you and your partner will be. This scenario illustrates the power of authenticity in real-life situations. It shows that by being true to yourself and expressing your feelings honestly, you can transform even the most challenging conversations into opportunities for growth and connection. Whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, or a professional interaction, authenticity is the key to building deeper, more meaningful connections with others. Now, take a moment to reflect on your own life. Think about a recent conversation where you could have shown up more authentically. Maybe you avoided expressing your true feelings, or you held back because you were afraid of rejection. What would it have looked like if you had been vulnerable and honest at that moment? What would it have felt like to be real, without the pressure of performing? Your action step for today is to find one relationship where you can practice authenticity in a similar way. It might be a conversation you've been avoiding or a situation where you're tempted to hide your true feelings. Take the opportunity to show up as your true self. Share your thoughts and emotions honestly, and invite the other person to do the same. Notice how the conversation shifts when both of you are being real. This is the power of authenticity in action. Remember, the more you practice authenticity in your everyday interactions, the easier it becomes to navigate difficult conversations and build stronger connections. When you show up as your true self, you create space for others to do the same. And together, you can build relationships that are rooted in trust, respect, and mutual understanding. Section 10. In this episode, we've explored the power of authenticity in transforming relationships, from romantic partnerships to friendships, to professional connections. We've seen how showing up as your true self, rather than performing or trying to fit into someone else's expectations, is the key to creating deeper, more meaningful connections. But authenticity is not just about being true to others, it's also about being true to yourself. When you embrace who you truly are, you stop hiding behind masks, and you open the door for real, genuine relationships. The core lesson here is simple: authenticity is the foundation for building trust, connection, and mutual respect. By practicing vulnerability, expressing your true thoughts and feelings, and setting healthy boundaries, you create space for others to be their true selves as well. You stop attracting people who are drawn to an illusion of who you are, and instead, you begin to attract people who value you for exactly who you are. Relationships become more fulfilling because they're grounded in real, authentic connection, not in performance. First, we looked at how people-pleasing and the pressure to perform create a barrier to true connection. You learned how people-pleasing can erode your self-worth and lead to shallow relationships. Then, we explored how to break free from that pattern by embracing authenticity. We covered how vulnerability and self-compassion are key to building your self-worth and allowing yourself to show up as your real self in relationships. Next, we discussed the role of vulnerability in creating deeper, more trusting connections. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength. By allowing yourself to be vulnerable, you invite others to be real with you as well, creating a safe space for authentic conversations. We also touched on how setting healthy boundaries is a vital aspect of authenticity. Boundaries communicate self-respect and give you the freedom to be yourself without compromising your values or well-being. After that, we talked about how authenticity helps you attract the right people. When you stop performing and start showing up as your true self, you naturally attract those who are aligned with you, who appreciate you for who you are, and who want to build genuine connections with you. Authenticity creates relationships that are based on mutual respect and trust, relationships that are deep and long-lasting. Finally, we walked through a real-life scenario where authenticity and vulnerability were applied in a difficult conversation. By practicing authenticity in that moment, you were able to turn a potentially challenging situation into an opportunity for growth, connection, and mutual understanding. This is the power of authenticity. It transforms ordinary interactions into opportunities for meaningful connection. Do today's steps. Practice vulnerability. Think about a conversation or relationship where you've been holding back your true thoughts or feelings. Today, take a step toward showing up authentically. Share something personal with someone you trust. Notice how it feels to be real and open with them. Set a boundary. Identify an area in your life where you've been people-pleasing or neglecting your own needs. Today, set a clear boundary. It could be saying no to a request, asking for space, or expressing your needs honestly. This will reinforce your self-worth and allow you to be more authentic. Reflect on your strengths. Take a moment today to celebrate who you are. Write down 3 things you appreciate about yourself, whether they're qualities, accomplishments, or simply things that make you unique. Embrace your strengths and use them to show up more authentically in your relationships. Watch next pointer. If this episode resonated with you, you'll want to watch the next lesson on embracing vulnerability in everyday life. In that episode, we'll dive deeper into how you can apply vulnerability in even the most challenging or everyday situations to deepen your connections with others. It's all about learning to embrace vulnerability, even when it feels uncomfortable, to create stronger, more authentic relationships. Authenticity isn't a one-time practice, it's an ongoing journey. If you want a whole library of Stoic focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships, this is what we do here every week. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.